Ladies and gentlemen, students and scholars, teachers and trainers, and professionals, listeners and learners, those who belong to the field of science, religion, spirituality, arts, commerce and engineering, the most honorable present Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, respected doctors and ministers, reverend fathers and mothers, affectionate sons and daughters, those who are listening, watching the truth of language and literature. It is really nice time, nice place, nice action. You are listening the words of literature. How the words of literature recreates the history of the different cultures in the world. Dear friends, I Dr. Rakesh from USA expressing the history of drama. Today you are listening the origin of the drama. First the deed, then the history, then the play that seems to be natural development of the drama in its simplest form. The poet, the great deeds of a people are treasured in its literature, and later generations represent in play or pantomime certain parts of the history of the story, which appeal most powerfully to the imagination. Among primitive races, the deeds of their gods and heroes are often represented at the early festivals, and among children whose instincts are not yet blunted by artificial habits. One sees the story that was heard at bedtime repeated next day in vigorous action, when our boys turn scouts and our girls princesses, precisely as our first dramatist turn to the old legends and heroes of Britain for their first stage productions. To act a part seems as natural to humanity as to tell a story, and origin is but an old story retold to the eye. A story put into action by living performers who for the moment make believe or imagine themselves to be the old heroes. To illustrate the matter simply, there was a great life lived by him who was called the Christ. Inevitably, the life found its way into literature, and we have the Gospels. Around the life and literature sprang up a great religion. Its worship was at first simple, the common prayer, the evening meal together, the remembered words of the Master, and closing hymns. Gradually, a ritual was established, which grew more elaborate and impressive as the centuries went by. scenes from the Master's life begin to be represented in the churches, especially at Christmas time, when the story of Christ's birth was made more effective to the eyes of a people who could not read by a baby in a manger, surrounded by magi and shepherds, with a choir of angels chanting the Gloria in excelsis. Other impressive scenes from the Gospel followed. Then the Old Testament was called upon until a complete cycle of plays from the creation to the final judgment was established. And we have the mysteries and miracle plays of the Middle Ages. Out of these came directly the drama of the Elizabethan age. Periods in the development of the drama. The religious period in Europe as in Greece. The drama had a distinctively religious origin. The first characters were drawn from the New Testament, and the object of the first plays was to make the church service more impressive, or to emphasize more lessons by showing the reward of the punishment of the evildoer. In the later days of the Roman Empire, the church found the stage possessed by frightful plays, which debased the morals of a people already fallen too low. Reform seemed impossible. The corrupt drama was driven from the stage, and plays of every kind were forbidden. But mankind loves spectacle, and soon the church itself provided a substitute for the forbidden plays in the famous mysteries and miracles. Miracle and mystery plays. In France, the name miracle was given to any play representing the lives of the saints, while the mystere represented scenes from the life of Christ or stories from the Old Testament associated with the coming of Messiah. In English, this distinction was almost unknown. The name miracle was used indiscriminately for all plays having their origin in the Bible or in the lives of the saints, and the name mystery to distinguish a certain class of plays was not used until long after the religious drama had passed away. The earliest miracle of which we have any record in England is the Ludus de Santa Caterina, which was performed in Dunstable about the year 1110. It is not known who wrote the original play of Saint Catherine, but our first version was prepared by Geoffrey of Saint Albans, the French school teacher of Dunstable. Whether or not the play was given in English is not known, but it was customary in the earliest plays for the chief actors to speak in Latin or French to show their importance, while minor and comic parts of the same play were given in English. For our for 4 centuries after this first recorded play, the miracles increased steadily in number and popularity in England. They were given first very simply and impressively in the churches. As the actors increased in number and the plays in liveliness, they overflowed to the churchyards. But when fun and hilarity began to predominate even in the most sacred representations, the scandalized priest forbade plays altogether on church grounds. By the year 1300, the miracles were out of ecclesiastical hands and adopted eagerly by the town guilds. And in the following 2 centuries, we find the church preaching against the abuse of the religious drama, which it had itself introduced and which at first had served a purely religious purpose. But by this time, the miracles had taken strong hold upon the English people, and they continued to be immensely popular until in the 16th century. They were replaced by the Elizabethan drama. The early miracle plays of England were divided into two classes. The first, given at Christmas, included all plays connected with the birth of Christ. The second, at Easter, included the plays relating to his death and triumph. By the beginning of the 14th century, all these plays were in various localities, united in single cycles, beginning with the creation and the ending with the final judgment. The complete cycle was presented every spring, beginning on Corpus Christi Day, and as the presentation of so many plays meant a continuous outdoor festival of a week or more. This is looked forward to as the happiest of the whole year. Probably every important town in England had its own cycle of plays for its own guilds to perform, but nearly all have been lost. At the present day, only 4 cycles exist, except in the fragmentary conditions, and these, though they furnish an interesting commentary on the times, add every little to our literature. The 4 cycles are the Chester and York plays, so called from the towns in which they were given, the Townley or Wakefield plays, named for the Townley family, which for a long time owned the manuscript, and the Coventry plays, which on doubtful evidence have been associated with the Grey Friars. The Chester cycle has 25 plays, the Wakefield 30, the Coventry 42 and the York 48. It is impossible to fix either the date or the authorship of any of these plays. We only know certainly that they were in great favor from the 12th to the 16th century. The York plays are generally considered to be the best, but those of Wakefield show more humor and variety, better workmanship. The former cycle especially shows a certain unity resulting from its aim to represent the whole of man's life from birth to death. The same thing is noticeable in Cursor Mundi, which with the York and Wakefield cycles belongs to the 14th century. At first, the actors as well as the authors of the miracles were the priests and their chosen assistants. Later, when the town guilds took up the place and each guild became responsible for one or more of the series, the actors were carefully selected and trained. By 4 o'clock on the morning of Corpse Christ, all the players had to be in their places in the movable theatres, which were scattered throughout the town in the squares and open places. Each of these theatres consisted of a 2-story platform set on wheels. The lower story was a dressing room for the actors. The upper story was the stage proper and was reached by a trap door from below. When the play was over, the platform was dragged away and the next play in the cycle took its place. So, in a single square, several plays would be presented in rapid sequence to the same audience. Meanwhile, the first play moved on to another square, where another audience was waiting to hear it. Though the plays were distinctively religious in character, there is hardly one without its humorous element. In the play of Noah, for instance, Noah's shrewish wife makes fun for the audience by wrangling with her husband. In the crucifixion play, Herod is a prankish kind of tyrant who leaves the stage to rant among the audience, so that to out Herod became a common proverb. In all the plays, the devil is a favorite character and the butt of every joke. He also leaves the stage to play pranks or frighten the wandering children. On the side of the stage was often seen a huge dragon's head with gaping red jaws, belching forth fire and smoke, out of which poured a tremulous troop of devils, with clubs and pitchforks and gridiron to punish the wicked characters and to drag them away at last, howling and shrieking into hellmouth, as the dragon's head was called. So the fear of hell was ingrained into an ignorant people for 4 centuries. Alternating with these horrors were bits of rough horseplay and domestic scenes of peace and kindliness, representing the life of English fields and homes. With these were songs and carols like that of the Nativity, for instance, as I outrode this Andrew's night, of 3 jolly shepherds I saw his side, and all about their old star shone bright. They sang Tally-Tallo, to so merrily the shepherds their pipes can blow, down from heaven so high. Of angels there came a great company, with mirth and joy and great solemnity. They sang Tally-Tallo, so merrily the shepherds their pipes on blow. Such songs were taken home by the audience and sung for a season. As a popular tune is now caught from the stage and sung on the streets. and at times the whole audience would very likely join in the chorus. After these plays were written according to the general outline of the Bible stories, no change was tolerated, the audience insisting, like children at Punch and Judy, upon seeing the same things year after year. No originality in plot or treatment was possible. Therefore, the only variety was in new songs and jokes, and in the pranks of the devil. Childish as such plays seem to us, they are part of the religious development of all uneducated people. Even now, the Persian play for the martyrdom of Ali is celebrated early, and the famous passion play, A True Miracle, is given every 10 years at Opera Mergou. The moral period of drama. Dear friends, those who are studying in the foreign universities English literature and language, we must listen every word of English literature that we are performing here. Really it will create the history and glimpse of the past for making them knowledgeable, informative, instructive, directive in the different fields of literature. The moral period of the drama. The second or moral period of the drama is shown by the increasing prevalence of the morality plays. In these, the characters were allegorically personages: life, death, repentance, goodness, love, greed, and other virtues and vices. The moralities may be regarded, therefore, as the dramatic counterpart of the once popular allegorical poetry, exemplified by the Romance of the Rose. It did not occur to our first unknown dramatists to portray men and women as they are until they had first made characters of abstract human qualities. Nevertheless, the morality marks a distinct advance over the miracle in that it gave free scope to the imagination for new plots and incidents. In Spain and Portugal, these plays under the name Otto were wonderfully developed by the genius of Calderon and Gil Vicente. But in England, the morality was a dreary kind of performance, like the allegorical poetry which preceded it. To enliven the audience, the devil of the miracle plays was introduced, and another lively personage called the Wise was the producer of our modern clown and jester. His business was to torment the virtues by mischievous pranks, and especially to make the devil's life a burden by beating him with a bladder or wooden sword at every opportunity. The morality generally ended in the triumph of virtue, the devil leaping into hell mouth with vice on his back. Like the miracle plays, most of the old moralities are of unknown date and origin. Of the known authors of moralities, two of the best are John Skelton, who wrote Magnificence, and probably also The Necromancer, and Sir David Lindsay, 1490 to 1555, the poet of the Scotch Reformation, whose religious business it was to make rulers uncomfortable by telling them unpleasant truths in the form of poetry. With these men, a new element enters into the moralities. They satirizes, they satirize or denounce abuses of church and state and introduce living personages thinly described that the stage first becomes a power in shaping events and correcting abuses. Dear friends, if you are listening heartily, this will make your heart stable in literature. It will make your mind stable in literature. For the permanency and for knowing the truth of literature, you must go through, you must listen these holy words of the holy scripture of Bible. The artistic period, the interludes. It is impossible to draw any accurate line of distinction between the moralities and interludes. In general, we may think of the latter as dramatic scenes, sometimes given by themselves, usually with music and singing, at banquets and entertainments, where a little fun was wanted and again slipped into a miracle play to enliven the audience after a solemn scene. Thus, on the margin of the page of one of the old Chester plays, we read the boy and piggy, when the kings are gone. Certainly, this was no part of the original scene between Herod and the three kings. So also the quarrel between Noah and his wife is probably a late addition to an old play. The interludes originated undoubtedly in a sense of humor, and to John Haywood, 1497 to 1580, a favorite retainer and jester at the court of Mary, is due to the credit for raising the interlude to the distinct dramatic form known as comedy. All these early plays were written for the most part in a mingling of prose and rest doggerel, and add nothing to our literature. Their great work was to train actors to keep alive the dramatic spirit and to prepare the way for the true drama. The artistic period of the drama. The artistic is the final stage in the development of the English drama. It differs radically from the other two in that its chief purpose is not to point a moral but to represent human life as it is. The artistic drama may have purpose no less than the miracle play, but the motive is always subordinate to the child and of representing life itself. The first true play in English, with a regular plot divided into acts and scenes, is probably the comedy Ralph Roister Doister. It was written by Nicholas Udell, master of Eton and later Westminster School, and was first acted by his schoolboys sometime before 1556. The story is that a conceited top in love with a widow who is already engaged to another man. The play is an adaptation of the Miles Gloriosus, a classic comedy by Plautus, and the English characters are more or less artificial, but as furnishing a model of a clear plot and natural dialogue. The influence of this first comedy, with its mixture of classic and English elements, can can hardly be overestimated. The next play, Gamer Gurton's Needle, is a domestic comedy, a true bit of English realism representing the life of the peasant class. Gamer Gurius, Gamer Gurton is patching the leather breeches of her man Hodge when Gib the cat gets into the milk pan while Gamer chases the cat. The finally needle is lost. A veritable calamity in those days. The whole household is turned upside down and the neighbors are dragged into the affair. Various classical situations are brought about by Deacon, a thieving vagabond who tells Gamer that her neighbor Dame Chatty has taken her needle, and who then hurries to tell Dame Chatty that she is accused by Gamer of stealing a favorite rooster. Naturally, there is a terrible row when the two irate old women meet and misunderstand each other. Deacon also drags Dr. Rat, the curate, into the quarrel by telling him that if he will but creep into Dame Chatty's cottage by a hidden way, he will find her using the stolen needle. Then Deacon secretly warns Dame Chatty that Gamer Gurdon's man Hodge is coming to steal her chickens, and the old woman hides in the dark passage and cudgels the curate soundly with the door bar. All the parties are finally brought before the justice when Hodge suddenly and painfully finds the lost needle, which is all the while stuck in his leather breeches, and the scene ends uproariously for both audience and actors. This first wholly English comedy is full of fun and coarse humor and is wonderfully true to the life it represents. It was long attributed to John Still, afterwards Bishop of Bath, but the authorship is now definitely assigned to William Stevenson. Our earliest edition of the play was printed in 1575, but a similar play called Daikon of Bedlam was licensed in 1552, 12 years before Shakespeare's birth. To show the spirit and the metrical form of the play, we give a fragment of the boy's description of the Duard horse trying to light a fire on the hearth from the cat's eyes, and another fragment of the old drinking song at the beginning of the second act. Our first tragedy, Gorboduc, was written by Thomas Sackville and Thomas Norton and was acted in 1562, only 2 years before the birth of Shakespeare. It is remarkable not only as our first tragedy, but as the first play to be written in blank verse. The latter being most significant since it started the drama into the style of verse best suited to the genius of English playwrights. The story of Gorboduc is taken from the early annals of Britain and recalls the story used by Shakespeare in King Lear. Gorboduc, king of Britain, divides his kingdom between his sons Ferex and Porrex. The sons quarrel and Porrex, the younger, slays his brother, who is the queen's favorite. Videna, the queen slays Porrex is revenge. The people rebel and slay Videna and Gorboduc. Then the nobles Then the nobles kill the rebels and in turn fall to fighting each other. The line of Brutus being extinct with the death of Gorboduc. The contrary life, the contrary file, the country files into anarchy with rebels, nobles, and a Scottish invader all fighting for the right of succession. The curtain falls upon a scene of bloodshed and of utter confusion. The artistic finish of this first tragedy is made by the author's evident purpose to persuade Elizabeth to marry. It aims to show the danger to which England is exposed by the uncertainty of succession. Otherwise, the plan of the play follows the classical rule of scene, the classical rule of Seneca,